Before you leave, Ed, obviously you have not done any work on an event that occurred just hours ago, the firing of this missile or missiles.
Let me say two things.
All right.
First thing is, if you're a military power, like the North Koreans, and you would like to hit a nuclear reactor downrange somewhere, you need to test your missiles to make sure that they can hit a pinpoint target. You've got to do some testing of your equipment. If you look at North Korea on the globe, you'll see that if you've got a missile that has to be tested, a medium-range ballistic missile or an intercontinental ballistic missile, where they're positioned, it's got to fly over somebody. Now, you could test it and fire it to the west, and it would land in China. You could fire it to the north, it would land in Russia. You could fire it to the south in the East China Sea, and maybe miss Okinawa and Taiwan and the Philippines if you're lucky. Or you could fire it to the east and try to get it between Hokkaido and Honshu through that narrow channel. It's still Japanese territory, but it's less risky than firing it in the other direction.
If you wanted to fire it into the ocean, Ed, you could fire roughly south and east and have a pretty good chance of bringing it down in water.
That's right, but I mean, my point is that you have to test it, and that's a much safer direction for North Korea to test their missiles than the other two directions, north and west. Number one. Number two is, I had an office in the NSA as well as all the other intelligence agencies. Anybody that talked to Richard from NSA would already tonight be behind bars. They would have lost their job and be facing a much longer jail time than this evening.
Richard?
I didn't say they were current. I said they were former, okay?
Well, then they didn't. If they were former, then they have no access to current intelligence.
You don't know my sources unless you're going to sit down.
I know NSA like the back of my hand, Richard. That's jail time.
Well, I'm afraid that you're not accurate on this one.
Then I guess the counterintelligence of NSA doesn't watch their people.
And maybe the system is breaking down. Look at the world. The system is breaking down, Ed, all around
I don't think you'll find Ed disagreeing with that.
People are scared. People are beginning to talk because it's not working. The chain of command is not working. It's unraveling all around us.
Any comment on that, Ed?
Yes. People who are trained to fight a war and to produce intelligence in wartime, that's exactly what they do for a living. They're trained to make the system work in times of absolute chaos.
And maybe the system is lying to them. Maybe they have decided that the Constitution is being abridged in ways that they never imagined.
Well, Ed, yourself, before Richard got on, you said that there's going to be a default. And my response to that was, well, then there's going to be a new government. And you said, yes, and more than that. So in a way, the unwinding, as a general comment, is pretty much on the mark, right?
No, I think it's a very qualified comment. And when I say government, well, we didn't expand upon that. What I meant was a political system.
Yeah,
We're going to have new political leaders.
Well, that's what I'd call a pretty damn big change.
By the way, a majority of the Soviet army, or the former Soviet army, is Muslim.
That's also true. That's also true. All right, Richard, thank you.
Thank you, Art.
Thank you for the report. And so your position on this, Ed, is that you don't buy it? You think you think it was a test?
Let me tell you, when President Clinton came into office, those of us in the military, we did not brief the President of the United States on anything because we knew he was a transient event, and he was not one of ours, like George Bush, like Ronald Reagan.
Yep. Well, I can believe that.
That happens to be the truth. And we kept him in the dark on a lot of things because he was a loose cannon. And he was not a supporter of the system. He didn't know what to ask for, and so we didn't tell him. I'm using we in a general sense. Is that wrong or right? It's probably wrong, but it also happens to be fact.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think that the powers that be, whether they be NSA or whoever's running the show overall, would regard this president as transient and not friendly to national security matters, and they might not have told him squat.
Well, they told him some things. They told him they provided him information that enough enough to give him what he wanted. But there are long-term projects in this government that span many different presidencies, and they continue. And those kinds of projects are usually pretty close hold, even even in this country's military.
So you believe then that what Korea did earlier was indeed a two-stage test?
Yes, I believe it was a two-stage test, and I make no sense out of the idea that Richard had that it was targeted against a reactor.
Okay.
They could not have hit a reactor. They don't have that kind of accuracy. What they're trying for now is just to get their systems to work.
No, though you've got to admit, it's just a ballistic missile is just something that goes up in an arc and comes back down. That is the meaning of the word ballistic.
Yeah, it's like a V2 or a V1.
Yeah, up and down, right?
That's correct.
So you've got to admit, at the very least, that firing this thing in the direction of Japan was a pretty damn risky thing to do, because that second stage, even if it had nothing on it whatsoever, could have come down on Japanese property, and that would have been real bad news.
I disagree. As far as the North Koreans are concerned,
Yeah.
It would have been far worse news if it came down on Russian or Chinese property.
Oh, well, I don't know. I would imagine there would be a quick communication from North Korea to the Chinese. Sorry, big mistake. Russia, that's a different story. You bring it down in Russian territory, and with the state of Russia right now, you're going to get a nuclear answer. So that would have been real bad news. I might not agree with you on China. China and North Korea are kind of buddy-buddy, aren't they?
And
Kinda.
they used to be, but China is becoming very antsy about the North Korean situation, because North Korea is an accident waiting to happen. The entire nation is starving to death.
That I agree
They're
with.
losing an entire generation. Of course, they will lose an entire generation, but they have nothing to lose, nothing at all to lose. And as you know, we specifically said, just like we predicted the current market collapse, the economic collapse, our data, and we stand by it.
Well, you're predicting a hell of a lot more than that. Ed, hold on. We've got a lot to talk about, obviously, and I've got a lot to fit in here. Part of the preparation that I enjoined you to get going on can be the following. The C-Crane Company has white LED flashlights. You've never seen anything like them. They make all other flashlights ever made obsolete. 3 AA batteries power this under normal use for 2 to 3 years. 2 to 3 years. They're LED arrays, and they'll last 100,000 hours. The body of the flashlight made of clear Lexan glass, just about bulletproof. O-ring construction, so I imagine it is waterproof as well. And in an emergency, one in which you would need light, this, believe me, would be the only way you'd want to go. This or a Beijing with a light, and we can't ship those right now because they're sold out. So if you want one of these white LED flashlights, they're $34.95. Or buy 3, and they're $29.95 each. Call Bob Crane in the morning at 7:30 a.m. Pacific Time at 1-800-522-8863. 1-800-522-8863. We'll be right back.